Adam and Jesus. Adam was the first man to walk on this planet, and he was also the first man, together with Eve, to make some crucial decisions that will determine the fate of all of us who came into existence ever since. Unfortunately, he failed in his trust and his obedience to God, and in this way, we were condemned to die. We were separated from our Father. Jesus, on the other hand, is just the opposite. He came for us to be justified, and he came for us to be reunited back with God. The question that Paul reasons in chapter 5 in the book of Romans is, how does Jesus accomplish that?
We're studying chapter 5 of Romans this week, and Paul is moving from Abraham to Adam, making a different point and expanding on his argument. The connecting line is Jesus and what he has done and is doing for us. Nothing of what Abraham did was able to justify him. This was Jesus' merit and accomplishment. Abraham's part was his response. And here, Paul starts with, therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace in which we now stand. Someone asked under a previous video in Facebook, are we saved by faith or by grace? I think it's a good answer from Paul here. He said, through Jesus, we have gained access by faith into this grace. Our salvation is an act of grace, made possible by Jesus. And our faith, our response, is how we get access to it.
Paul starts chapter 5 from verses 1 to 9. He brings a worth noticing point. He says, since we have been justified by faith, we have peace with God. Which means that the justification is already finished process. It's not continuing. There is no more works that could be done to complete the process of justification. Also, he adds in verse 8, he says that this justification happened while we were still sinners. Jesus died for us. And this exact line puts justification out of our accomplishment, out of the reach of what our works can do. Paul ends his thought, for if, while we were God's enemies, we were reconciled with him, how much more, having been reconciled, shall we be saved through Jesus' life? So, do you still think that you have to do something that will help you being saved?
Paul also talks about our experience with suffering, producing perseverance, building character, which creates hope. This is a journey. We don't have the merits, but we are part of it.
Adam permitted sin to enter in our environment. He transgressed against God's will, command, instruction. Sin in its nature brings death. So this is how Paul explains in verse 12 that Adam brought death to all people. Does that make Adam the only sinner, the sole bearer of sin? No, we all are. We have all sinned, clarifies Paul. So we can conclude that we all are bringing death to our own actions, something that was started through Adam's choice.
We are individualistic society, but we are also part of the same whole. We are humanity, and we are tied together.
What Adam did brought devastation for the life on earth. In fact, what Adam did was increased and increased after him to his sons and daughters. What increased it even more, believe it or not, was the law, says Paul, because it was revealing and pointing out to sin. This, though, was needed so that grace can be increased all the more, says Paul in verse 20. How, you might ask? Good question. Through righteousness, through Jesus Christ, says Paul in verse 21. So let me sum it up. Man is capable of transgressing, sinning. The law is capable of revealing and pointing out to sin. Jesus is capable and able to grant us the gift of his righteousness. Well put, Apostle Paul. I have no more questions.
We can get into strange waters if we try to dig into the mechanics of how does it actually work. And there are many questions to which we don't have the answers, but the point is that what we have is leading us to death. This is the unfortunate reality that we know very well. What Jesus brings is life, because he conquered the grave.
Paul concludes his thoughts with two contrasts at the end of the chapter 5. The first one is between the actions of two men, Adam and Jesus. And the second one is the trespass of one man contrasted with the gift that came by the grace of another man.
Jesus proved on earth that Adam's choice wasn't impossible. He wasn't doomed to fail. Jesus showed the difference and made the difference.
Where Adam failed, Jesus conquered. Adam brought disobedience, sin, condemnation, death. Jesus brought life, justification, and righteousness. If somebody did it, it was Jesus. If somebody achieved it, it was Jesus. The gift is something that Paul talks about 5 times in just few verses in chapter 5, trying to solidify the idea that our trespass is dealt only through the acceptance of a gift. Our justification is a gift in its pure intent. No other gift but the merits of Jesus accepted through faith.
What a gift! Join us next week for the lesson, Overcoming Sin.